years now.
Maybe you don't want to say that every time. Or something.
Or something.
And for our YouTube people, you get to watch this.
No, they're not
they
saying
don't?
this. This
Hi
is
there.
all good. Oh.
Hi, and welcome to Relationship Rehab with Lee
And Paul.
the Coughing Man.
Yeah.
We are the writers of CoupleDumb.com, where we talk about relationships. And on this show, we talk about...
Relationships.
Yes.
That's
all we do.
That's right.
Morning, noon, and night. Relationships. For those of you who've never watched the show, this is not a G-rated show. We talk about real issues, and we talk about them in real ways.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have little kids around, you might want to put them away.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that, this is a sexually explicit show. It's just that it's an adult show.
Right.
And
unless you want to launch into a conversation with your kids after the show.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which I personally, as a therapist, don't mind.
Yeah.
But if you're not ready to do it, I don't, make them go. Let's see. What's going on? Yes, we are the writers of CoupleDumb.com. We also have another site called Disaffirmations, where we do dysfunctional affirmations. That's more of our cute site. That's more of our funny site. That's where we allow our funny side to come out, but still within the mental health field. So lots of things emerging, coming up, in the sense that, every time we write about one thing, it's like we peel off another layer and something else comes up, or somebody mentions something, and we get comments that spark another conversation. So this week actually is something we're going to be discussing menopause this week, which is something that we wanted to discuss in December, but due to cameras not working and stuff like that, we weren't able to have these guests on the show. So this is a little bit, it's almost like, I don't know. It's not in the flow of what we've been doing. So, but is this such an important topic? I mean, really, really important topic. And being that I'm all fired up from yesterday's news stuff that came out with women's health issues and stuff like that, that I'm really excited about having some very, very professional people on our show.
I must admit, I don't know how they're going to feel about
any
political part, but
I know.
God,
how can't we ask? I mean, one of our guests today, Dr. Lavera Miller, is, a gynecologist, and apparently she's dedicated her life to this. She's a woman's health advocate, and not just, some lady, she's somebody real. So I want to know her opinion. And in fact, it's funny how I mention her, and there she is. Yes. So she's not on the show yet. So I will be introducing her in about 2 minutes.
I've got to move things
but
around.
Yeah. And why is it such a big deal? I mean, being that we just talk about relationships. Well, one of the things that we tend to do as human beings is we compartmentalize, and who was the president? Clinton was considered a great compartmentalizer because he could run the world and still have his affairs and do all this stuff, and nothing would, touch anything else. Well, you see, that's not really a good way to live your life. That's not a real healthy way to live your life, because being integrated and treating yourself as, as a whole is a healthier way of being. And it's not as, almost, I don't know, dissociative as compartmentalizing is. And seeing your health, ladies and men and gentlemen, seeing your wives' health or your friends' health as something important, as something, as being part of them, is of vital importance as well. So,
hello, just hang on.
So, yeah, it's both of them. Perfect. So then, I didn't know who it was going to be. Maybe one or two of you. So, I'm very excited about this, and I hope to God that they're not really going to be upset with me because might get a little political. Is that okay? Are they just smiling?
Well,
just shaking their heads? Okay. They're not hearing me?
Political, so.
So, let's bring them on.
Okay.
Okay, so our guests today are Dr. Lavera Miller. She's a gynecologist and a menopause specialist. And her husband, Dr. David Miller. And Dr. Miller, wow, your credentials kind of scare me. But he's a pain specialist, and he has a pain clinic. And she has a women's clinic. And is it Indiana? Am I right about that?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so welcome to the show. The whole political thing is, I don't know if you were watching the news yesterday, or if you read the news, about, the congressional hearings they were doing on women's health. And, oh, you're a busy, oh, and what? I'm sorry? Ah, wow. Okay. So, yeah, yesterday they were doing congressional hearings on women's health. And what a lot of women were reacting to, and I will speak to the female, Dr. Miller, is the fact that there was 5 men on the panel discussing women's health, and there were no women anywhere in this. I mean, the Congress people were all men. There was 5 men on the panel, and it was just almost archaic, I mean, when we have brilliant women like yourself out there who are women's health advocates that could speak intelligently on the subject, and this is why, I think that a lot of people are in reaction right now to these things. So, but this is all the same thing. Start political, and then we're going to move into really what you're going to talk about. I'm like lost. I'm flustered. Yesterday was such a horrible day about this stuff. But in women's health, right now everybody's talking about birth control, and that's like the big political hot button thing. And one of the things that women are trying to stress and trying to educate people on is that birth control isn't just used for birth control. Right. And I know, I'm going to introduce your book because it's just, okay. The book is called Womenopause, Fit, Feminine, Fabulous in 4 Weeks. I'm 46 years old, and about a year and a half ago, I had my first hot flash, okay? And, I think I actually wrote down the date of it because it was such an emotional thing. And one of the things that we've been discussing since we talk about relationships is how weird that women aren't really prepared at all for such a dramatic change in their life. Would you agree with that? Wait, apparently the audience can't hear you. So Paul's working on that. Crap.
They can see really well.
Wait.
No, they can hear.
The audience can't hear you. That's the problem.
How do you do this without feedback?
Yeah, Paul's working extra hard here. So, as she was saying, I'll talk about some of the statistics that are in the book. The one that I found to be probably one of the most you know, shocking actually, was 6,000 women a day enter menopause. You know, when you talk about that as a society, you know, we have statistics on, you know, on cancer. We have statistics, and I'm not saying that this is in the same realm at all, but you know, we have these statistics on, you know, when girls start their periods, and this is not something we talk about at all. We don't mention when this happens to women, and yet, you know, we're all going to go through it at some point. You know, I was telling him, I'm like, I remember my mother prepared me for years for my first period, and, you know, no one's mentioned, hey, Lee, how old are you now? Hey, these are things that are going to be happening to you. So I find that really interesting, not just in the sense of a generational thing. I think it's just something we don't talk about.
Can you hear us?
Go ahead and try.
Go ahead and try. Go ahead.
So, you know, we've been surprised too. Lyra being a gynecologist, it's always been a part of our social dynamic, and our kids have known about it since they were little.
Mm-hmm.
So many other people, I think the subject is stuck somewhere between a bad joke and a, you know, a cliche or a taboo, and I don't know why exactly, but that's the culture that we're in.
Right.
And we really want to dispel the myth. The only thing ending here is your period. Everything else is just beginning, and I think the word needs to get out, and I think people need to know how to live it the best way, and it's really the beginning of everything.
But it is an important, you know, biological event in a woman's life, because at menopause, the final menstrual period, there is a dramatic increase in heart disease, mood disorders, dementia, osteoporosis, arthritis. All those things really skyrocket at the time of ovarian function failure.
And that's why it is just as important as the statistics of cancer, because heart disease is the #1 killer, not cancer.
Right.
And we can actually prevent and decrease heart disease by 50% by the way we approach menopause.
Right.
Can we go into what is menopause?
Yes.
That's because one of my, you know, my kind of society opinion on it is men, you know, avoid the topic. Women fear the topic. We have names for it, the change and that kind of stuff, but actually knowing what it is, what is actually happening in a woman's body, I doubt that many people know, you know, outside of the medical field.
Okay, so menopause is simple. Menopause means the pausing of menstruation. That's the medical definition.
Okay.
So in reality, that means the final menstrual period. When women during their reproductive years, in their 20s and 30s, they have very regular cycles. They have a period approximately every month, and they have kind of predictable biological changes that they get used to. Towards the end of their reproductive years, it's called perimenopause, they start to have irregular periods, and they may begin to develop some typical menopausal symptoms. The typical ones: hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia. But just like you mentioned, you know, people like to make fun of hot flashes, like, oh, there's nothing to it. But in our book, we term it hot dreads, because it's really, there is an emotional, edgy component that sometimes gets missed. And that's what really catches women off guard and blindsides in the perimenopause.
And menopause is actually defined as no period for a full year. Then you can look back and say, aha, I celebrated my menopause 12 months ago. But it's something you have to know in retrospect.
Right.
Which is difficult. Which is difficult as a woman, since when you're in perimenopause, you're already getting your regular, and then as it stretches out, I mean, for me, it becomes this, oh, wait a minute, am I going to get it? I don't know if I'm going to get it. And you almost feel like a little kid again, because you can't plan for it like you used to.
And what you're describing can last easily anywhere from 4 to 10 years, and even longer in some women. So you're right. You cannot predict. There are some tests that help you know, but they're not good enough yet to predict.
Wow.
And the symptoms can be quite disturbing, particularly the insomnia and mood swings.
Yeah.
Women are generally very used to their normal kind of PMS changes, but those can really morph into something quite more disturbing and persistent.
every so often I'll be talking also to our people who are chatting with us, because I've got a screen, another screen in front of me.
Right.
So right now, Mentally Inc. is saying that apparently she has what, hot flashes? I think
Right.
I think that she's just starting. She's saying that she is 33 and beginning to get hot flashes.
Wow.
So
That's early, but it is true that some girls will start in their 30s.
Wow.
And
That's
so
scary.
the biology behind a hot flash is very complicated, and there are a lot of research institutes really searching the neurologic basis. But the bottom line is mostly it's the ovary secretes a continuous but pulsatile amount of estrogen, and when that becomes erratic, it's the downfall, sliding, decreasing blood levels that triggers a place in the brain, the thermoregulation center, that makes it go haywire. And so they'll vasodilate, and then they'll cool off, and they'll chill and sweat, and it just disturbs that thermoregulation thing, and it's all due to changing, fluctuating estrogen levels in the bloodstream.
And that drop, that extreme drop in estrogen, can come many times in the same day or once in a week, and it can be very variable among women. So never getting a blood test in estrogen is really going to tell you where you are, because you don't know if you're catching it at the peak or in the bottom trough, and it's not reflective of what's really happening dynamically in the woman.
Oh, Mentally Inc. is saying that she started having hot flashes and irregular periods, and is wondering if it could be weight related.
Be what?
Weight related.
Yeah, there are some studies looking at the relationship between weight and hot flashes. It appears that women that are overweight, have a higher BMI, over 30, will suffer from worse hot flashes, probably because they just have more insulation and they're less likely to be able to thermoregulate. But
Yeah.
hot flashes happens to thin women and thick women at approximately the same rates. So it's not the cause.
Okay.
No.
But it seems to make them maybe worse.
But being quite overweight can actually contribute to your hormones not being as quite as flowing and normal as usual, and that can be a problem too, which can be a separate problem than perimenopause, often referred to as polycystic ovary disease or Stein-Leventhal syndrome, and those can have hot flashes too, for a little bit different reason, but still hormonally based.
Now, I have a question, because I noticed that with me, I had, when we were still living in Miami,
I'll get coffee.
I had several hot flashes, and I noticed that they were associated with stressful times too. That as we were gonna get ready to move cross country and all that, I was having them maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, and once we moved, they just stopped. Once I relaxed, they stopped for a while, and I think it went like about a few months, and I just had my first one on Super Bowl Sunday, next to the meat section of the store, and it was like this, wow, it's been a while. So, I mean, is it stress related also?
It is stress related also, but it's also variable as it's coming along. Let's say you had no stress at all. You could still go through a period of hot flashes and maybe even skip a few periods and then go right back to regular ones. And that's why we have to go with the definition of 12 months no period.
Right.
Then that's finally the menopause a year ago, because what you're describing happens with stress a little more, but without stress it also happens too.
Okay, cool. Now, let's get into the stuff with the book, because one of the things I love about the concept of womenopause is, one, just changing the whole paradigm of what menopause is, and changing the name too. So, womenopause, it says changing something that we consider to be negative into a very positive thing. Because, I see it as it's a time to start concentrating on living healthier, living better, and getting excited about living differently, So the 4-week challenge program, now, this I think is brilliant. And I got this from their website, and I don't know if we could see this.
Yeah.
Yes.
You could see that? Okay, good. It's the W score. Can you explain that? This is part of their book, the Womenopause book. Can you explain the W score?
Yes, I use that actually every day at the office. Every single patient comes in and fills that out so that they can compare throughout their life what their score is doing. But these are the scores of the things that have changes during the perimenopause and menopause time. And everything is in there from sleep to sex to vaginal dryness to hot flashes, mood changes, skin changes, urological changes, joint pain changes. And it scores the woman, and she's able to put on a scale 1, 2, or 3 how much it bothers her. And typically what we like to do then is start a program that includes the exercise, eating right, vitamins, and hormones if they want them. And then they come back in 4 weeks, and we see and they see the dramatic change in their score. This is a really positive reinforcement that they can really change things, and they can change it in 4 weeks.
I mean, one of the things I was trying, Paul was asking me, it was like, what is the main idea? I don't know. For me, it's almost like changing menopause from almost like a disease model to a life process. And I don't know if you would agree with that.
We sort of look at menopause as sort of like a turning point that a lot of women will stop what they're doing because it just shakes them out of their routine with hot flashes and night sweats. And they
not sleeping.
They realize that they've been so busy with their family and with their careers and maybe not have taken as much time for themselves. And so it shocks them back into the realization that they have this physical body that's united with their soul and their heart. And you have to take care of all of it for any of it to feel right. And so it's just like pregnancy is for a lot of women. They go like, I'm going to stop drinking and smoking. I'm going to take care of myself with the baby. Menopause kind of does that again for them, in their midlife. It's a very positive time, potentially.
Right. Yeah, and I appreciate that this is what you're stressing, because I think that I've asked the question to many women, what would you want to know about menopause, and I don't know, it kind of has a tinge of fear. Definitely has a lot of fear to it. But it's also very depressing, the changes that your body's going through. One of the women that I asked this morning, adult acne, how do you deal with all of a sudden having to break out again? After so many years of, I got my skin back, now we have acne. So what kind of things can a woman do for that?
Actually, there's a lot of things. Mostly it's hormonal. So the most effectiveness would be to treat it with hormones so that you level out those highs and lows of the estrogen. And the best way to do it is through the skin, and you can take 17-beta estradiol, which is made from plants in the lab, into our exact molecule of estrogen, which is 17-beta estradiol. That's what we all have in our bodies. And you can take it through the skin in a very safe method by spray on the arm, gel on the leg, or patched on the tummy, or a ring that you wear in the vagina. And all of them will take it safely through the skin, skipping the liver where you get the increase in blood clots and also the decrease in sex desire if you take it orally. So we don't do orals anymore.
Wow. So that brings us to hormone replacement therapy. A few years ago, it just became this big hot button thing where it was just terrifying. And, I know that for me, my experience of menopause was watching my mom go through hormone replacement therapy, but hers was really weird because they were giving her estrogen shots every month, and she was having horrible headaches, and she ended up having to have a radical hysterectomy and all this stuff. So what is, I mean, and I know that the big fear of don't do hormone replacement therapy is followed by it's okay to do it, but nobody's talking about it anymore. So then women are in that quandary of, do I do it? Do I not do it? Am I basically setting myself up for, a massive heart attack or cancer in the future? Massive heart attack if I don't do it, or cancer if I do it. So it's like choosing between one evil or the other. So tell the truth about hormone replacement therapy, please.
Okay, it's really been a whole decade of misinformation, and it's really sad.
Yeah.
But it's not too late, and we can do something more about it, and that's part of why we wrote the book. Osteoporosis, for those girls who have stopped their hormones, it's actually increased their fractures in their hip by 55%. That's a huge problem in death rate.
Right.
It's also, you can, if you take estrogen, if you start during the window of opportunity, you decrease your chances of heart disease by 50%. You decrease your overall death rate from anything, including cancer, by 40%. And the problem is with estrogen only, back in that study that they did with the WHI, there was a 26% decrease in breast cancer. And that didn't even get out to the media. That was too good a news. It was only the ones who combined it with progestogen, a fake progesterone, that actually had the slight, insignificant increase in breast cancer that wasn't even statistically valid. So it's a whole new news out there now that for most women, 95% or more, estrogen is not only a safe way to go, but there's more benefits than there are risks. And anything that can, if you could take any pill and decrease your chance of dying by 40%, I think that's a good pill.
No, I agree. I would have to agree with it. You know, I think that the problem is that, you know, there aren't enough statistics classes out there for people, and they don't understand the difference between something that's statistically significant and something that isn't, and that it's an anomaly or an error, you know, a possible error in the math. So, you know, I appreciate that information. I mean, because some of the questions I was being asked were things like, you know, ask them, you know, what do I do instead of hormone replacement therapy? Something completely natural, because I don't want to, you know, kill myself. And it's like, it's sad when, you know, the bad publicity comes out and they never clear it up.
You know, we think of the hormone changes at menopause as really being of two types. Type 1 is the estrogen withdrawal that occurs in perimenopause, and that's what triggers the majority of the symptoms. And as there's never been any question that hormone therapy ameliorates all of the menopausal symptoms: hot flashes, mood swings, night sweats. The long term, the second part, the long-term estrogen deficiency is now, 10 years later, well known to very dramatically increase heart disease, dementia, mood disorders, osteoporosis, arthritis, and other cancers. And hormone therapy then reduces the risk of all those chronic illnesses. So, yes, of course, it relieves all of the symptoms of menopause. And if women are symptomatic, you know, they might be, encouraged to take it for that. But there's really a whole nother school of thought. Well, even if you're not having symptoms, hormone therapy might be a good choice for a lot of women to reduce the risk of serious chronic illnesses. And I think that's the really huge news that's really not generally available.
And I think another important thing that we've not mentioned is that estrogen actually decreases belly fat. And I think that is one of the biggest fears that women have about menopause. And I don't think that they know that. It redistributes that particularly dangerous part where the fat sits in the belly. And the other thing that you mentioned was wanting to do this natural. What's more natural than giving us our exact molecule that we're deficient in? Yeah. We're not trying to take Lipitor or something that is unnatural in our bodies.
Viagra.
We're trying to put something natural back in our bodies.
Right. And then how would you rate, I mean, since I don't know enough about this, like the bioidentical stuff that they're doing now, like the Suzanne Sommer stuff where, you know, she's injecting herself in the vagina and putting stuff on her arms and legs. I know you mentioned, you know, the other, the one that you put on your arm, the spray that you put on your arm. Is this the same stuff that we're talking about?
Yes, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about hormone therapy. So,
okay.
And it's a big subject. I don't want to just gloss it over, but bioidentical hormones have been mischaracterized in most women's minds through marketing or whatever as being more natural and being safer than FDA prescription hormone therapy. And we would say that's unequivocally not accurate. Bioidentical hormones are real hormones. Real female human hormones are not made anywhere naturally except inside of a woman. And there's no such thing as woman, female, human hormone donors. So those hormones are made somewhere, somehow.
Right.
So the FDA-approved products are synthesized in a series of steps from plant sterol components, and so are bioidentical hormones. They are made exactly the same way. The only difference is in FDA-approved products, there's literally hundreds of safety measuring steps along the way to prove the consistency and purity of the products. In bioidentical hormones, all that quality control is missing, and it just comes down to, who's going to be consistently producing the most completely pure product. And there's really, in our opinion, no comparison. FDA-approved products win every time that they're analyzed by independent labs. The bioidentical products will fail one of the 6 tests about 80% of the time. So I think it's such an important thing. If a woman's going to choose to take hormone therapy, she should take the best she can possibly get.
And that's covered by insurance, right? I mean, the FDA stuff is going to be covered by insurance, whereas the other stuff is coming out of your pocket.
Right.
I hope.
Right. And I think there's one really important factor that needs to be known by every woman is that in the bioidenticals, the progesterone in the cream is not progesterone once it's absorbed into her body, and therefore she's not protecting her uterus, and that's why those women are getting uterine cancer. So I think they need to be careful about that. It's not an approved product, and also they mix in estrone and estriol, which are pregnancy estrogens, and those have never been tested, or do we have any known idea of their safety. So they're experimenting and trying to make it look like those are safer than hormones, and they are hormones, but they're just not quite as safe.
Right.
So we think women would do well looking at, of course, our book, we have a whole chapter on that subject. But there are other, really good websites that they can go to. We like the information at North American Menopause Society, NAMS.org. But also there's a good section at MayoClinic.com and at WebMD. There's also the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology also has a position statement. In reality, there are no women's health advocate medical societies who support the use of bioidentical hormones. None.
Wow. That's and honestly, this is something that I'm going to be talking to you about this after the show and emailing you about this information. Mainly because it's all about publicity, and it's all about who's getting the word out faster, and it seems like the medical establishment is a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of how to take advantage of social media and things like that to get the information out, because
Which is why Womenopause.
Yeah.
Try to get the information out.
Right. And and honestly, if you are, I think that the best gift that you can give a woman at the age of 40 is probably this book. Because for me, it really, it prepares you. It prepares you just like my mom prepared me for my first period. It's going to prepare you for what's going to be happening to you. And not only in a very friendly way, because I like that there's humor in it, in the sense that, this is stuff that's going to happen and we don't need to be fearful of it. But there's also the biological things too. Now, the 4-week challenge, briefly, without having to give away the whole farm here, what are the things, what are the domains in a woman's life that you address in your 4-week challenge?
Number one, the most important is probably exercise. Exercise is way important. It is singly the most important thing. It works better than Prozac for depression. It also helps with hot flashes. It helps with the sex problems that develop. It helps with the heart. It helps with the belly fat. There's just not, it decreases heart disease by 50%. It decreases breast cancer by 50%. People don't know you can actually decrease cancers by exercise, and it's statistically proven. It's not just a we think it does this, but they've got studies to show that it does. And the ideal, if you're that perfect woman in right condition, you need to do 150 minutes a week. But if you're that woman who just needs to lose a few, you need to do at least 300 minutes a week. And also, it's a good idea to wear pedometers, because if you do 10,000 steps a day.
I wear one every day.
Me too. Mine's in my bra, so I can't pull it out.
Come on.
So
I can.
He's my husband. 10,000 steps a day to maintain.
Right.
15,000 if you want to lose weight.
Okay.
So it's just, that's probably the number one most important. And the second would be what you eat.
Food. So we've seen some very interesting graphs. Since about 1950, there's been people that kept track of how many books and magazine articles were published about diet and nutrition. And there were like 30 in the whole year of 1950. And now there's about 3,000 a month published about diet and nutrition.
And that's not including websites.
Yeah,
Right.
and so that the volume of information has gone like this, and directly in line with the increasing volume of information has been the percentage of people overweight.
Right.
It's probably the only medical condition where more knowledge has resulted in a worsening of the problem.
Right.
So it's not a lack of knowledge or whatever. So we kind of agree with a couple of the experts that today think that the principal problem with weight among North America is the type of food that we eat. So we distill it with our patients into just eat real food. Don't eat any processed food, fake food, fast food, junk food, snack food. It's the food that's on the edge of the supermarkets that it's that God put on the planet for us to eat, and that's what human beings successfully ate for thousands and thousands of years, and being overweight was less than 5%. Beginning at about 1950, food companies realized they couldn't make a profit selling broccoli, so they stopped selling us that, and they stopped selling us other things, and we bought it. And it's killing us. So we recommend that people eat a whole food diet that's basically plant-based, and the more colors, the better. And you probably can eat as much as that as you want to. And anything that has a package or a label or anything describing the contents of the food is fake. Don't eat it.
Again, there's been big studies that show eating fruits and vegetables decreases cancers.
Particularly breast cancer.
Particularly breast cancer.
Right.
So should I be feeling bad that our 5-year-old is probably in the kitchen right now getting a corn dog and some Cheetos for breakfast?
Yes, we recommend in the book, we say step one, take a hefty bag and clear out everything in your kitchen that
He's
has a
eating
label.
yogurt.
He's eating yogurt.
He's
That's
eating
the
yogurt.
best we can do right now.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yogurt's good.
He's eating yogurt. Yeah, he's 5. What can I do?
Actually, question about, we write a lot about, we're in this together. So as a guy, how can I support her as she, transitions?
Yeah, well, we have a blog about that. What men need to know about menopause.
Excellent.
And, so you can find our blog at womenopause-interactive.com. And so we liken it to a little bit like Lamaze class, where the guy goes with the woman and sort of pre-learns the things that's going to happen.
He kind of remembers those, yeah.
Yes.
He kind of remembers
supportive things to help pitch in along the way.
Yeah.
I think men can learn some of the basic practical things about what the biology is, what her symptoms are going to be, and what are some of the practical hands-on things you can do to help improve that. And in the end, what's better than just a strong communication, a commitment of working together through the whatever medical problems you have. And in that case, just knowledge and preparation really just does more than anything else.
And whatever helps the woman also helps the man. So
Yes.
same lifestyle changes are important for both.
And being that we're talking about, husband and wife now, sex. I know that's become like that's a lot of the questions that people were throwing at me. The elasticity's gone, it's dry, it's not the same anymore, the sex drive goes down. And I know that for me, that has, definitely happened, because I'm not the same girl I used to be.
You just took away all our good food, so give us back some good sex, okay?
Okay, just like we were talking about with the exercise, exercise does help,
Right.
and so does sexercise. The more sex you have, the more it
I'm
stays
liking these
younger and
people. Yes,
healthier.
go ahead.
Good.
But there's also those who do not want to use any hormones. They can use mineral oil. Is very good for a regular daily application. You put a few drops on your 2 fingers and you apply that on the whole area. But it should be done every day after your bath, just like you put your lotion on your legs and arms. Don't ignore that part. Mm-hmm. And also the act of rubbing it in is also good for the blood supply and getting it going again, because we actually do get a decrease in the blood supply, a thinning in the skin, it tears easily and gets infected easily. You can also write the pH with a product called Refresh. That's what
I use that.
Like religiously at this point.
I use it religiously, and I thought that it was just, because you read the thing, it's just about yeast and stuff, and I got it at a conference, and right around the hot flash time is when I decided, this is saying something about, itchiness or whatever. I'm just going to start using it, because my doctor was like, well, you probably have a yeast infection, but I didn't have a yeast infection. And so I started using that.
That's often misdiagnosed that way as a yeast infection. They get treated again and again, but it's really lack of estrogen. So if you don't want to use hormones, that's the route to go. If you do want to use hormones, you can use local hormone there, even if you don't want to use it centrally to the rest of the body. It stays local there, affects nothing else. It affects, I should say, the bladder, the urethra, and the vagina. And it will heal those. It will decrease stress incontinence. It will decrease urinary tract infections. It will decrease vaginal infections. You will grow the blood supply back. You will get the thick, velvety folds back again, called rugae. You will get the young, healthy type of vagina that you had before by applying local estrogen only.
So we should talk a little bit about the normal female sexual response and how that relates to menopause. So the basic Masters and Johnsons from the 50s, there was desire, arousal, orgasm, resolution. And more modern sexologists really put it more into a circular feedback, where there is some steady state of desire, then a woman will go through arousal, then peak arousal, then orgasm, and then there's this feedback right back into your desire state.
Right.
So if you have several repeated bad sexual experiences because of a dry vagina, that just gradually chips away at the basic desire state. And so it is the most common sexual dysfunction of menopausal women is that because the vagina is dry, it doesn't get the arousal and responsiveness, and so their desire goes down. And it's just basic Pavlovian biology.
Right.
So the vagina really takes a beating, even sometimes long before they develop hot flashes.
Right.
It will start, the vagina is intimately loaded with estrogen receptors. And so when the estrogen starts to fluctuate or go down, the vagina loses its elasticity. It loses its ability to secrete lubricants during arousal, and it loses its ability to respond. The nerves and blood vessels embedded within the vagina and external genitalia actually atrophy and go away. So there's no neurologic feedback to promote the arousal part, and so then orgasm goes away, and the whole process becomes unpleasant. Right. It's completely reversible. Even after years of no estrogen, topically applied estrogen to the vulva and the vagina will regrow, like Lavere said, the mucosa, the blood supply, and even the nerves regenerate so that sex can become more or less normal again.
And arousal returns. And also, it's real important to know, women notice that the labia disappear down there. The estrogen will actually regrow them. Wow. So it really works well.
In addition to bladder infections and incontinence are extremely common, rarely spoken about among women in perimenopause and menopause. And those things are dramatically improved also with local topical estrogen.
Amazing. I think about what my mother went through, and what she would have benefited with all of this stuff, because she actually had, to have bladder, they had her bladder pinned, and and rectal reconstruction and all that during her, and all of this could have been remedied in a lot of senses with this stuff instead of
There's exercises that go along with it that are important. One of them is the Kegel exercise, where it's the act of clamping down. Another one is what I call the bottom lift. It's where you're laying on the ground and you have your heels up against your bottom and you lift your bottom up off the floor and hold it. Those two exercises are good to put along with this.
Wow.
They help with sex and with bladder control.
And it's funny because, as I'm listening to this, this seems more natural than sitting around, taking, vitamins and, and using plant things or whatever, than it does, we're talking about hormone replacement therapy as something, that's a more natural approach than doing the fake bioidentical stuff. And that's what I'm hearing, and that's the message I'm getting from this.
And it's kind of counterintuitive to what most women understand.
Right. And I think it's because of the bad publicity that the HRT got, over the last 10 years. It's really amazing. Because all the questions I got was, I don't want to do hormone replacement therapy. I'm not stupid. So I want something natural. And I'm like, my first reaction is like, yeah, I agree with you. But now I'm listening to you going, no, I think, because I know my sister is going to be 52 next week. And she takes estrogen, the over-the-counter estrogen. And she's been doing that for years. But, I can't take it because I'm allergic to cranberries. So that's a good thing. It's got cranberries in it. But, now I think that I'm going to go the other way with this.
It also has black cohosh. Sometimes we forget and think that if it's from a plant, it's natural. But really, we're not plants. We're animals.
Right.
And it has black cohosh in it, which can be dangerous for the liver. And you really shouldn't use it more than 3 months. And also, in the studies with estrogen versus placebo, there is a placebo improvement. That means something fake that's not really there. There's about a 30-some% improvement with placebo, and the woman using the estrogen has about 30-some% improvement. So it's really no different than the placebo itself.
It's a placebo.
It's been studied quite well. I was going to say one other thing. I don't think I was going to say that.
That's okay. It'll come up.
Yeah. Are you sure? Nothing? Okay. Is there any more questions and stuff? Because I can't see the TV from here.
No.
Okay.
No question right now. I'm watching.
I don't know. Do you have any more questions? Because I'm overwhelmed. Honestly,
I was going to pitch in one other thing.
Yeah.
I think when women do internet searches, they'll read things pertaining to the Women's Health Initiative study, WHI, and that was the study that came out 10 years ago. And they had a big press conference before the article was released, and then within a month, half of all the women in the United States who took hormone therapy stopped it because of the fear from that study.
Right.
I think it's real important for women to recognize that study only examined one type of hormone therapy that really is never even used today. And so the results of that study probably does not pertain to the majority of women today. That study was not a study about control of hot flashes and so on. What they did, they didn't take menopausal women who had symptoms. They started with women who were 65 years old, who had had no hormones in their body for a decade and a half or more, and put them on oral, horse urine hormones that are never used today, Premarin, and then tracked them for 5 or 10 years to see how many risks and side effects they had. Well, that is such a backward way of looking at it. It's hard to even imagine. So what we really learned is that there is a window of opportunity in the perimenopausal years that starting hormone when women are younger is much safer, in fact has dramatic effects. Using transdermal through the skin hormones in lower doses and using only natural 17-beta estradiol, then all those findings that were so negative 10 years ago, all those problems go away. The blood clots, the heart disease, the breast cancer, none of that really applies to modern used hormones.
And actually, even in that study, when they used the wrong estrogen, they still got the 50% decrease in heart disease that's begun during the window of opportunity. And they still got a 40% decrease in mortality. So even with the not so good hormones, we still knew from that study some tremendous things, but it still didn't get out in the media.
And it's also important that even with the old style hormones, when they go back through and look, if they tease out some younger women that started it, if they'd had a hysterectomy and took estrogen only, their risk of breast cancer was dramatically, significantly less than normal.
26% less.
If you ask any woman on the street, they'll say, well, yeah, I think that hormone therapy increases breast cancer.
Right.
And who would want that? I mean, that's
Right.
like a drop-dead issue right there. But
Right.
it's not accurate.
That's mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
For a woman my age, those statistics are mind-blowing, because even when you're talking about I look at my mom, her mother had breast cancer, and my mother did estrogen for about 10 years, and she's already in her 70s and no signs of breast cancer. And my grandmother had breast cancer like in her early 60s. So, there is an effect. I mean, I could see it still, the fact that, her face is still, pretty, young looking, and even using it back then, there has been an effect still 20 years later or 10 years later.
Yes, in fact, that's a really good point. They just came out in JAMA in the April issue last year and said that not only was there a 26% decrease in cancer, breast cancer in those women at that time, that would have been 2004, but they restudied it again today, and even whether they were off their hormones or on their hormones, they still have a 26% decrease in breast cancer in all three age groups. And I don't think there's any other thing out that would decrease breast cancer like that.
No. That's amazing. Well, I know that, this last, 45 minutes has changed the way I'm looking at this. And it's time to really get the word out and start changing the minds of the women out there, because they've already done a really good job at corrupting what HRT is. But, and I know that that's not what you're about too, because it's also about taking care of yourself differently, but having the options and having, not the fear of that. I think that, it's really dispelling all the fears about menopause and hormone replacement therapy and just living a different kind of life. So
actually, let's do the nutshell thing. If, kind of as we close things up, if you wanted to give your one single message, you got everybody in front of you, what would it be?
You can be healthier at 60 than you were at 40.
That pretty much says it all, doesn't it?
I would like to expand that just a little bit. You can be healthier, happier, sexier at 60 than you were leaner, keener at 40.
I like that. That's wonderful. Well, just know that you will be getting an email from me within the next week, because this conversation needs to continue.
Yeah.
This is really, when we talk about relationships, we also talk about relationships with ourselves. And, and my stress has always been about, examining your life and living a happier life. And this is definitely in that path for me. Obviously, it's something I'm going through, but it's in, looking at this in a very positive light and as an opportunity to take over your life in a very different way. So I appreciate both of you very much. God bless what you're doing, because this is really amazing work. So where can they reach you? I mean, where can they read more about you?
So our principal website is Womenopause-book.com.
And this is the book, if you could see it.
That's the book, and so it's Womenopause, the title, book.com. And that'll give access to our blogs, our podcasts, and our email.
Okay.
And of course, they can get the book as a Kindle or a print edition from Amazon.
Excellent. And I saw that on your website. You also had it at Barnes & Noble, and there was one other one. But I can't remember.
Most of
our publisher.
Most online bookstores have it.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and have a safe trip in Boston, and get home safely, and we'll be talking very soon. Thank you for being on our show.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, so, wow. Okay, I don't know what messages you got. I know what message I got out of this. Like I said in the beginning of the show, I'm 46. And I know that, people are going to watch us and be like, okay, last week you were talking about sex, and who to have sex with. And this week you were talking about menopause. Well, guess what, ladies? If you're in your 40s or, in your 50s, this is stuff that you need to consider, when you are dating and whatnot. Because we're doing a lot. I mean, a lot of women are deciding, well, no, I'm just not going to do anything, in my 40s. I'm not going to go dating because you don't feel that sexiness anymore. And that is completely biological. And according to Dr. Miller and Miller, it's reversible. So there's no reason for this, and the decline in sexuality, I think I never looked at it in a biological sense, even though I knew there was a biological difference there. I saw it more psychological, and we've been dealing with it more psychologically.
I must admit, as a guy, I feel better about the idea that this is a physiological thing than a lack of desire or anything of that sort.
Right.
So that works.
I mean, and it's not. I mean, it's so biological. I mean, we're talking about that everything in your nether regions have changed. You're not even talking about the same one down there anymore. Your trusted friend. I mean, I know that one of the women talked about, one of the women that I asked questions to, not obviously the Millers, but, dryness and that kind of thing. And you're not used to that, I mean, like, it's not like when I was 20 something having sex where drop of a hat, you're ready to go because your body was responding to you. Well, your body doesn't have the same chemicals anymore to respond.
Apparently, Mentally Inked is already making the list of questions for a doctor.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm very excited about this because, I mean, this is something that, I discuss this with my sister who's older than me, but, I'm definitely going to get on the phone with her right now and tell her to stop taking the estrogen.
Yeah, right.
Immediately. And go to the doctor and start getting some, and she'll be very different. What? You're reading something?
Oh, yeah, I'm reading.
So,
I'm going to have to ask her about this and see if it's a perimenopausal or my thyroid since I have some of the symptoms.
Yeah, mentally, you're young, so you should not. I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, they said that it's possible, but
you want to check it out.
You want to check it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a little bit different at 33 and 46. I don't need to. I don't really need to ask the question because it's kind of like one of those. Well, of course you're perimenopausal. Age-wise, I kind of fit the bill. 33 is kind of young for the stuff. That's stuff. But anyway,
so we got about 2 minutes.
Got about 2 minutes. We have what are we gonna say next week? What are we gonna be talking about? What did we write about this week? I'm like completely lost now. What did we write about? Oh, I know that last week we talked about life changes, and I think that next week what we're going to do is kind of an amalgam of 2 weeks worth of writing from coupledom.com. Life changes and, how to deal with big life changes in your life. This was inspired by someone that we knew whose husband became ill, and how that just throws you into this backspin of I can't deal anymore, and when you look at divorces and things like that, life changes are the biggest. When we say things like irreconcilable differences in divorce, a lot of those things are spurred by life changes. So we're going to be dealing with how do you deal in a relationship when there's like a crisis and there's a dramatic change and just getting older. I mean, hell, menopause is one of the things that a lot of couples break up in their 40s and 50s, and it happens around the menopause time. And it also happens, men happen to be, some men go through male menopause, and which is different. It's a very different thing, and it seems there is a biological component and not, but all of those things.
We'd love to have somebody on the show on that one.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
of course, we had, womenopause. Now he wants, male menopause.
Yeah.
Because,
Equality.
he needs equality, needs the extra time. But so come back and let's talk about that stuff. And thank you for coming. And thanks the Millers.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Get that done. Okay. Okay.
We off?
Yeah.
How many?
17.